And I'd like to welcome you all to this Kundalini Yoga Teacher Training Information Session. My name is Nirmal Singh, and if I may, I'm going to have quite an extensive PowerPoint, because my intent with that is to do a few things. One is to introduce you to the training program, as well as introduce you to the practice. So it may not be new to a lot of you, but I think just having a perspective of what Kundalini Yoga is and has to offer in relation to what the teacher training program then helps offer and dive more deeply into, I think can be quite interesting. So I'll put the PowerPoint on, and I'll be talking a fair bit, and I'll take breaks, and I'll ask you if you have any questions, and don't be shy if you do. I'll also stop certainly at the end of the PowerPoint and have still lots of time, again, to engage with any questions that you might have about me or about the program as it is right now. Okay, so let me share my screen. Here we go. All right, so that's skipping ahead a little bit. Let me go back to this. It's a little introduction about me. I go by this name, my nickname, Nirmal Singh. And I have a background in advertising, about 24 years or so, and that's full-time in marketing and advertising, mostly advertising. And in 2002, I switched over to wellness full-time. And so that's been another 20 plus years or so. I had, and I'll get into that a little bit, an introduction into teacher training in the mid-90s, or into Kundalini Yoga, I should say, sorry, in the mid-90s, and then in teacher training in the late 90s. And, it was as a result of my involvement in this newish area for me at that age that I decided to, make that shift into more consciously into wellness. So in 2002, I did make that change. Some of you, if you've been in the community a little while, you might be familiar, gosh, and I'm talking now pre-pandemic, you might be aware of some of the stuff I've done through my business called The Wellness Path, where I've produced concerts, sacred chant concerts rather, since 2006 was the first one I did with Sonatum. And I've done many since then, up until the point where, again, the pandemic brought the two I had in the works for 2020 to a halt, that being Deva Premal and Nitin, again, you might have heard of, and Ajit Kaur from our particular Kundalini practice as well. And I had the good luck to finally, after many fits and false starts over the pandemic years, to finally bring those two programs back into Toronto this past year. So that was a lot of fun. And so, again, under the umbrella of the Wellness Path, I also do Kundalini Yoga and teacher training with that. I also more recently have been involved in the last number of years in coaching and counseling work. As I mentioned just before we got started here, before some of you were online with us here, I've been doing some work with Compassionate Inquiry since its inception. And that, for those that you may be familiar with the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, who's quite renowned in the recovery and trauma fields. And so I love that work, which kind of came out of Beyond Addiction, which is another program that I worked on with my mentor, Satnam Kaur. So in 1999, I became a Kundalini Yoga teacher and a trainer in 2006. And then I've been a lead trainer for the last 8 years. And as I just mentioned, I've also been a Beyond Addiction trainer since 2008. And so that's a program that uses as a foundation Kundalini Yoga work, but it draws on the wonderful experiences and insights of people like Dr. Mate and many others. I'm remarried to Birkor since 2016. I have 2 adult kids who are in the Toronto area. I live in Brantford right now, which is, you might know, an hour and a half or so west of Toronto. with beer and with my dog. You'll see there in the top left corner, those images there, my dog Lottie. So that's a little bit about me. So tonight we're going to talk about what is Kundalini yoga. That'll be brief because it sounds like everybody here on the call has at least some experience with Kundalini yoga. I'm going to touch on some of the teacher training topics rather, as I mentioned. I'll give you some thoughts around, why take this particular program. Importantly, and this is again a question that's come to me offline, getting a really good sense of what the course requirements are, because I absolutely want you to know what you're stepping into. And then maybe at the end there, if there's any question about, hey, how do I go about finding a class or so, I can certainly, help you with that. Okay, so one might ask, why are you here? What drew you to considering this at this time? And I'll throw a couple of thoughts out there, as a reason why we might be drawn to anything, particularly in a spiritual / healing arena. And one is out of necessity, so sometimes people are looking for resolution to some pain that they're in, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, what have you. And so they're searching for something. One is might be a possibility, which is as much as, hey, I was talking to a friend and I heard about such and such, and it sounds kind of interesting to me, and I'm going to check it out. And another, a third option might be, there might be some kind of intuitive pull of some sort. You can call it a calling, but some tug that is asking of you at this point in time, maybe to explore, this inner world of yours a little bit more deeply. You might have a sense that there's something maybe more to what you might be experiencing to this point in time that meets the eye, and I'll mention that, for me, it was a little bit of all of this, but definitely the third one, I had this sense that I just needed to know more. I had a weekly Kundalini yoga practice I went out to class to do, but after a while, after a few years, it just wasn't enough for me. I had that longing sense, again, without being able to really put my finger on it. And wow, for me, and that was in 99, that really, really addressed what I needed to know. Because this is very much, and I'll get into this in some detail, very much an exploration about you. This is also going to prepare you to be able to teach class, but I think more importantly, it's about you understanding yourself on a very deep level. And that can be an awesome thing to have, regardless of what you choose to do moving forward. You might or might not even choose to be a Kundalini yoga teacher. And to be honest, that wasn't at all my intent when I went into training in 99. I had no thought about that. I just needed to know and understand this on a deeper level, and it was what it was, and here I am today. So there you go. All right, so what is this? Well, even stepping back another step, which is, what's yoga? It comes from this biblical word, yoke, Sanskrit word yug, which means, to join together. And so what is it that, we are joining together? Well, we're joining together this more obvious thing, which is our finite, being, and this other part of us, infinite part of us, that we may have a lot more trouble putting our finger on. But that's really the purpose of all yoga. It's about bringing infinite and finite consciousness together, on some level where we start to really get it. And we start to live that way. Kundalini yoga now, this is a term that, or a reference that you might, again, have come across in this practice. I certainly have over the years. Some calling it the technology of awareness. Now that sounds like, all right, what does that mean? It sounds lofty, but so what? So what that actually has come to mean for me is this awareness of these two aspects, my very human nature and my infinite nature. And how, in the process of that unfolding, I really start to understand my own, the opportunities within me, to really be much more than I might understand myself to be able to accomplish in this lifetime. Because this is very much about, in my understanding and the understanding of Eastern teaching, this is about us being human beings, being spirit, really, first and foremost, spiritual beings having a human experience, and not the other way around. Not the other way around. So what this does allow us to do as we explore this in teacher training is understand, what our full potential is as human beings using this practice, really living our lives to their fullest. And like any kind of training program, we are going to delve deeply into an intellectual understanding, of course, of what this practice is and where it comes from. But in reality, intellectual knowledge isn't enough. And I love this maxim that says, knowledge becomes wisdom when it's your personal experience. Knowledge becomes wisdom when it's your personal experience. And that says that you need to have the experience of this. It needs to be out of your head and into your essence, not just your body, but your being, in order to really understand it in this deep level that I'm referring to. So certainly any teacher can give you knowledge and techniques, but the true wisdom of this in any practice comes through your own experience of this. And when you embark on a program like Kundalini Yoga teacher training, this does require a sense of commitment and discipline. And it's not something that I think will feel like a heavy thing or something that you just want to walk away from. I think it will be inspiring at the same time that you'll be placing demands on yourself that you may have not, felt were required of you in the past. And that is partly going to be, I think, a result of all of the things, as you do this kind of deep inner work, all the things that get dredged up that you may not have had to confront quite in the same way before. Things will change, guaranteed. And I don't know if any of you on this call have done other teacher trainings, and maybe that was also your experience in other yoga disciplines as well. But, it's kind of guaranteed that life will change. And ultimately, I think for the better, even as it might be uncomfortable at times. So through this understanding experience that I'm talking about, we really start to understand, what's holding us back. What are our blocks to growth? And, and that means really exploring this kind of inner unknown aspect of ourselves. And that can be kind of scary, whether it's on a conscious level scary or not. I mean, on a subconscious level, it's not a place that the mind has a whole lot of comfort in exploring. Partly because it has no experience with delving into the unknown, unless that happens to be a wonderful habit that you currently have, where that simply is how you are supported, but commonly it's not. And so we start to understand, on a deeper level, what is it that's kind of holding us back? And we start to then use these tools of Kundalini Yoga, meditation, breath work, and Kriya work, in order to help move us along that continuum into something, again, that I think ultimately is really, really exciting. These new ways of thinking, these new perspectives that we have, we understand, that we're capable of much more, and that we start to let go of our demoting habits and look to help expand and affirm, promoting habits in this process. And I'll get into this in a little bit, but it's one of the things that we do in this practice. As a course requirement, you will do a 40-day meditation. It's 40 consecutive days. It's a 31-minute meditation. And that's sometimes a difficult thing, for the mind to wrap its head around. And I get it, absolutely get it. Level 2, each of those 6 modules in level 2, are 90-day meditations. If you choose to do level 3, 1,000 days. You're doing one thing for 1,000 days, and that's a heck of a discipline and a heck of a commitment. But starting to where we start on this very foundational yoga training program, 40 days. And not everybody is able to pull that off without a couple of tries at it, because, something messes up on day 35. It's like, thank you very much. And I'm starting again at day one. That's the way this works, because this is about, as the teacher of this practice would say, it's about potty training the mind. It's like, no, I'm in charge. You made me forget. You distracted me around this. You gave me 101 excuses why, today was not a great day to do this. It's like, okay, that's fine. So we're going to start all over again, because you start to then recognize it's my soul, it's me, it's my essence that I'm putting in charge of this. So this is a little bit about that. And I'm throwing this in here because, again, this should be very familiar with you if you've done many or any classic Kundalini yoga classes, because a typical class is 90 minutes. Sometimes you'll find a 75-minute class, but typically they're 90 minutes. And what do they include? They include, again, commonly a breath practice or some kind of a warm-up, or both. A kriya, which is asana with movement. Again, you'll be familiar with that. And these kriya practices can be, any length. We simply teach them in the way they were taught. And then the next component is a deep relaxation, where you have an opportunity to really integrate the work that you've done through the physical kriya practice. And then finally a meditation. And then again, our aim might be to do something of maybe 11 minutes or so. And so that's what that, again, calming looks like. And very often, again, people's experience, this might be your experience with it too. It's like, wow, something shifted. Like I really noticed something come out of that, and that will often, be shared after a class or two, and that's often, again, what draws people to keep returning to Kundalini yoga. There's something, quite powerful with the way it's designed to bring about the greatest possible effect in the shortest amount of time. This is referred to as a householder practice, like from the ancient days. And what that meant was, these practices are put together in a way that allows you to not just be a renunciate and out there living in a cave just doing yoga 24/7. This is meant to be a practice that allows you to devote a certain component of your day, and the ideal might be 2.5 hours, let's say. Ideal may not be the real, but that, and then the rest of your day is meant to be, your life as a householder, doing what you do, to live out this existence as a human being, having, that particular experience. So anyway, that's what that looks like, that class. Again, it should be very familiar to you. So now I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about a few aspects that I think are, if they're not unique to Kundalini yoga, they're, quite important, at least in our practice. And we delve quite deeply into an understanding of these particular aspects. And the first one is sound and mantra. And that, again, through just your experience with this practice, that we use sound all the time in class. I mean, we use it to tune in with the Adi mantra, Om Namo Gurudev Namo, right? We use it to finish a class with that long time sun blessing. And in between, sometimes we have mantra that shows up in kriyas that you'll chant out loud. Sometimes, and often maybe, there'll be mantras that show up in your meditation, either mentally vibrated or, again, sounded out loud. And even at minimum, again, you'll probably have this experience in class where your teacher is guiding you to stay, really tuned in and focused by bringing mantra onto your breath, like inhaling sat and exhaling nam, just as a way to stay kind of, again, really engaged and focused. And so sound clearly is a big deal. So what is sound? The whole universe is built on sound. The whole universe is built on vibration. And so every sound that we utter, in fact, you could say then every word that we think has a vibration attached to it, which can be very, very powerful. And I want to do a little experiment with you right now to give you a sense of this over the next couple of slides. And so this is a little background, how this actually works. So there is a science to it. It's not just, well, just somehow energetically it works. There's a little bit of science with this too. And so on the upper palate of the mouth, we have 84 meridian points, 84 meridian points, 64 of which are towards the front of the upper palate, behind the top teeth, front teeth there, top teeth. And then we have another 20 points a little further back on the fleshy, softer part of the palate. And so we don't pay any attention to this, of course, just when we're talking, but there is a way that when we intone these sacred sound syllables, as we do in this practice, that we are engaging, the tongue engages with these different meridian points. So you can think about it as like a computer keyboard, where I'm playing this keyboard, that is connecting to the endocrine system. And it does this through the hypothalamus, which is kind of this executive center, so to speak, because it's what turns on the pituitary gland, which is the master gland of the body, right? So, the hypothalamus, has a lot of things that, it is responsible for on its own, but importantly, it is what triggers the pituitary to do its magic with all the other glands in the body. So there's a relationship then with both the nervous system, because the hypothalamus works nervous system and endocrine system. So it's kind of working both of these things. But the net result of this is that, we have this opportunity through chanting to change, in fact, the whole chemistry of the body, because of the impact this can have on the pituitary system, pituitary gland rather, and then the rest of the glands, that are brought to bear with that. So again, this is something that we get into a little more deeply in the course itself. And here, I'm just give you a sense of what I'm talking about here. Here's my experiment with you. So let's do this. You're all muted, so you can just chant along with me. I just want you to repeat this sound over and over again. La, 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 la. And notice where your tongue is hitting the roof of your mouth. La, 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 la. Okay? You got that. Now, you're familiar with Om Namo Gurudev Namo, tuning in. Do this. Om, 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 Om. And so notice where the tongue is now up on against the upper palate, much further back, right? And you can also feel Om, if you're doing it correctly, Om, you can feel that kind of vibration in these cavities, which we've referred to as the conch, but these cavities, in the skull area. Ong, ong. And so it's creating this vibration also in these cavities that are related to the pituitary gland, actually that gland. Ong, ong, ong. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a real brief 101 on how chanting works. So just again, give you a sense of, all right, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Okay, keep going, Nirmal. So here we go. I'm going to talk now for a moment about breath. Breath. Pranayama is a big deal, again, in ours as it is in other practices. And so here we do certainly explore, these two aspects of breath. We have a very Western aspect, the respiratory system, which we actually study a little bit in this training program. If you've had other trainings at all, in a healing field, whether it's somatic work or whatever that might be, you might be already, involved with anatomy and physiology, work. And so we do get into that AMP in this program. And I think in a deep enough way, in a way that helps us understand also, the relationship with what's going on with posture and so forth as it relates to, the Western science aspect. But so here, specific to breath, we can look at how and understand how this works on both subtle and gross levels, both on a conscious level as well as an unconscious level. And I made a reference, sorry, pardon me, earlier to some of my background in the Beyond Addiction work, and you might know this anyway, that we have a lot of habits. And as a result of that, many of our habits are on autopilot, and that's a good thing. Like if you had to think constantly about everything, you would go crazy. You wouldn't be able to keep up. There's just way too much going on that can be put on autopilot, and that's just fine. Even the way we breathe, and this is what I'm going to come to here now, is something that we probably don't give a whole lot of attention to. But how we breathe has a huge impact on our state of mind, our physical state. And so at least at what we do in a program like this, as you will find again in other yogic practices, is as we work on breath, how we breathe, and understand what we can do with that, we can bring about some pretty significant changes in our lives. And I'm not just talking about on the mat. All right, so I've kind of been referring to this. In our practice, we refer to this more subtle form as prana, life force. And again, that can be really quite palpable. In other practices, like in Chinese medicine, it's referred to as qi, but we're looking for how do we build that inner vitality within us. And we can do that, again, very consciously by employing breath practices. So back to this idea of not being very aware of how we breathe, I'd like to just pose this to each of you, which is, are you aware of how you breathe normally? Because if you're anything like me, and I've been working on this a long time, so I've improved over the years, but I tend to be a very shallow breather, and I tend to be more of an upper chest breather. A little bit shallow, a little bit erratic, a little upper chest. And the point, I guess, also is like it's a chicken and egg thing as well. When we talk about stress and understanding that, again, a little bit more deeply, how does that show up in your body? Because very often it will show up in some way, shape, or form in your breath. So as we learn more about proper breathing techniques, of course, we can start to let go of that armoring that takes place and helps protect us. Like the body's mechanism is an incredible thing where, whether it's some kind of trauma or something, it has a way of shielding itself from harm, even to the detriment, of maybe living a life fully. And the point, I guess, as again, you probably understand, is that it doesn't matter. The system responds the way it responds, whether the threat is real or if it's perceived. And most of the time, it's perceived. Most of the time, it's perceived. We just go into an automatic kind of stress response. So as we start to recognize, oh yeah, that's my thing. This is how I respond, when I'm triggered. That's awesome, because then we have tools that we can use to help mitigate that. This isn't about, ignoring anything or suppressing anything. This is about recognizing what it is as it shows up and finding, proper ways of dealing with that. And I do think that with this kind of training, we start to understand these kinds of concepts, more deeply. I love this maxim too, which says, the mind follows the breath and the body follows the mind. The mind follows the breath and the body follows the mind. So what this is saying is that I can control my mind by controlling my breath. And it all comes down in the mind, right? It really does. And that, if you look at, as we study a little bit of Patanjali, who's kind of like the godfather of yoga. I mean, he wrote the sutras back over 2,000 years ago. And the first time that yoga was codified, in his second sutra, the first sutra says basically, again, English translation, this is about yoga. And then the second sutra says, yoga is about controlling the thought waves of the mind. And then all the rest of the sutras that follow all expand on that concept. So I do very much believe that a lot of this work that we do is all about how we put the mind in its place, which is as a support to our essence, to our soul, as opposed to the other way around. Because, in Western culture, very often we glorify the mind, a beautiful mind, right? But that is what also gets us so much into trouble. And so I would like, and I hope that I am able to find ways of putting myself, capital S self, maybe more in charge rather than allowing the mind to be in charge. So anyway, the mind follows the breath and the body follows the mind. So I can actually then affect what's going on in my physical body if I can affect what's going on in my mental body through the work that I do with breath. Interesting factoid. So there are studies that have shown, that men breathe 16 to 18 cycles a minute. So let's just say it was even a little slower than that. And for women, a little bit faster. Let's say it was slower than that, though. And it was 15 cycles a minute. 15 cycles a minute means 2 seconds. It's 4 seconds, right? For one breath. 4 times 15 is 60, right? So that's 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. So when you think about that, that was a cycle. That's pretty quick. That's the nature of the average person. And that's not under stressful conditions either. That's not under stressful conditions. So that's just, again, typically how we breathe without even thinking about it. When, as you I'm sure have experienced in yoga classes or on your own, that as we slow that breath down, let's say, so that we're breathing, twice as slow, so to speak, or, we have fewer cycles, 8 cycles. So that's 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. That's like sa, ta, na, na on the inhale, on the exhale. Again, that doesn't seem too fast, but yeah, when we can slow our breath down that far, then we're kicking in our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's that part, importantly, that's that part of our autonomic system that allows us to rest and digest and recover. So, we have these sympathetic and parasympathetic systems that are constantly in play in our body, but many of us have sympathetic just kind of on, and don't have natural ways of turning that off. Well, we have tools then through breath practices that help us, in fact, bring that into balance. And again, we do quite a deep study on breath work. And throughout the entire program, you do a lot of work with breath as well. So we work as a licensed KRI, Kundalini Research Institute program. We work with a very specific set of materials, and the trainers that are involved, whether they're lead trainers or trainers in training, we work again under very precise, strict, parameters of delivering this program, because this program is the same program whether it's delivered through me in Toronto, as it is in Montreal, as it is in Brazil, as it is in China or Russia. And the people that are qualifying to teach it need to qualify the same way to deliver this. So I think there's some assurance that if it's a KRI program, that it is kind of like a good seal of approval. I'd like to think so, because there are other programs out there that are purportedly Kundalini Yoga based that are not KRI licensed. So it's a little buyer beware there. Okay, so what does this entail? Well, you do learn all the basics of Kundalini Yoga. It does involve a blend of lecturing, reading on your part, yoga and meditation to give you a powerful, deep experience. So it is a blend, a combination of all of these things. You do get personal guidance and feedback in all of the key teaching skills. And importantly, you get lots of practice. You get lots of practice teaching. And that's so that you feel fully prepared and confident when you finish the program to go out bang and teach right away. And then I think, and this is not a small deal, I think, you're introduced to, as I say in this last bullet here, a community of people committed to what you're committed to. If you're here, this is about self-improvement, about healing, and about professional development. It's all of these things. It's like, wow, I really want to understand this more deeply, and I have something to share with people. I have something to share with people. And it may not even involve you sharing on the bench a formal Kundalini yoga class. And to me, it doesn't matter. It was, as I said, it wasn't my intention, to go there. I just had this longing to learn and understand myself. And the reality is, you're in this program, you're a teacher, like in the story. It's not like, oh yeah, I can be this is my teacher hat and I'm a teacher 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Thursday nights. And then after that, I can kind of go to my other life. Sorry, it does not work that way. And I think that that's a good thing. So the reality is, I believe you change, and I believe that what it is that you change into, or as that unfolds for you over time, that is what you're out there modeling to the world. And that's what the world needs, whether it's within your family unit or in your, larger community, whether it's social or professional, it all matters. And I think this kind of program helps as much with that as it does prepare you to teach class, if you choose to teach class. I've already said this. It's internationally recognized through our institute. It also meets, all the requirements for the 200-hour Yoga Alliance membership, which, again, I don't know why that perhaps is important to some people. It doesn't, to me, it's like that's something you can do, and certainly what other non-KRI yoga, Kundalini yoga training programs may find a way of offering, some kind of membership that way through Yoga Alliance. But our program, at least provides that as an option if you also want that. You do receive, this is where I was leaving off, not only like a student membership the year you're in the program, but the course pays for your first full year membership after you finish the program as well. And what does the membership give you? It gives you a few things. It gives you an opportunity to get access to particular programs that non-members don't get access to, like workshops and specialized classes and stuff like that. It gives you a website that you can actually list your information on if you don't have something of your own and you want to, direct people to find you that way. It gives you commonly discounts on things like, materials, whether it's music or manuals, to our events like summer solstice, winter solstice. I think it gives you discounts on that, etc. Anyway, so there's some value in that. Many people don't bother, and those that do, I think, get some value out of that. All right, so what does this look like? And so here's where, those that are curious about all of the requirements, this is going to expand over a number of slides here, all right? The first is that, like many of these kinds of programs, you have a combination of in-class hours and home study. So we do have 180 classroom hours. So, this is, if any of you have been on my website and looked at this, and there'll be a slide on this later. Anyway, there are 11 weekends, 2-day weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. So again, I've given you Friday, the pain of a Friday night off, so I just add an extra weekend to make that work. So you're meant to attend all those hours. If for some reason you can't be in all of them, there are mechanisms that will help you be able to make up for that. And again, I can get into that if there's a need to at this point. But, there is a requirement to make up those hours. Second point here is that you need to attend 20 classes, Kundalini yoga teacher training, Kundalini yoga classes with a certified, which means a KRI certified Kundalini yoga teacher. Now, again, as our world expands and opportunities are available more online, there are more and more people that are claiming, themselves as Kundalini yoga teachers and trainers, and they may or may not be, and they may be good, or who knows. But the point is that we're quite specific about wanting to know that your experience once the course starts is with a KRI certified teacher, and the reason, and that you're in a classic class. So again, there are certified teachers these days that are doing a little bit more of their own thing. They've given themselves more permission to do that, as there has been some, upheaval in our practice in our Kundalini yoga world over the last few years, which some of you might be aware of. And if you're not, I'm happy to talk about that at the end of all of this. Point being, though, that there are people out there that are doing a little bit of their own thing, which is not then helpful as a model for you for this teacher training. We want you to have the experience of understanding exactly this kind of class that we would want you to be qualified fully to teach going forward. What you do with it after that, is on you, but at least through our training program, we want to know that that's as clear and as tight as possible. So there's 20 classes. That's not a cost that's included in your tuition. So you would pay for it as you pay for any yoga class. We have what we call early morning sadhana as an experience for you to have just 5 of. And that's something that occurs at 4 a.m. I made a reference way back when, I don't know if you remember, to like 2.5 hours as being kind of a optimal amount of time that one might, in the days of the rishis, devoted to your practice before the sun came up, right? And then you got on with your day. Well, we have a way of replicating that by getting up and starting a practice at 4. It finishes at 6:30. And I can, again, not here right now, go into a little more detail of what that practice looked like. Needless to say, there's yoga and there's a lot of meditation that's involved with that. It's a wonderful practice, very powerful practice, and KRI requires you to at least have 5 experiences of that. And the good news is, for those of you that are in Toronto, we're coming into Toronto even for a teacher training weekend, it's there. We have it there. It's also available online. Sabdaram, pardon me, offers it online. And whether it's the classes or the sadhanas, I'll let you know right now that I will permit some combination of online with in-person. But again, if it's impossible to get to the in-person, or to get many of those in whatever community you might be in, then we'll talk. But importantly, we want you to have that in-person experience, because it is quite different from online. Again, all of you have probably attended online classes, and everybody has attended online and in person. Yes, hands, show of hands. Those of you that are on camera. Okay, you've had that experience. Okay, Quinn has off camera. Okay, so yes, it's a different experience. And so for us, for what's being modeled to you, as well as then when you get into the teaching of it, we want to make sure that you are comfortable teaching in person. Recognizing, there's a whole thing around that, and hey, a lot of us have had to figure it out over the last 3.5 years, how to teach online, and we've done the best we can with it, and it's improved absolutely over the last few years, but it's a little bit of a different animal. All right, the next bullet here: to attend a meditation day intensive. So commonly in our history of Kundalini yoga, it's been white tantric yoga, and that's a kind of an adjunct practice that's been available in our community. We've had the good luck of having it in Toronto since the mid-70s, and both in person with Yogi Bhajan and via the video programs, which is the only format it's been available in since the mid-80s. And that will, and it's been a hiatus for 4 years, since since May 2019. May 2020 it was canceled, been canceled since then. It'll be back it'll be back in May of 2024. But that won't be the only option as it was in the past. We've made do with other meditation intensive day options that are up to lead trainers to create or bring forward as options for people if they so choose. We had to do that during the pandemic years. Going forward as a community, and there's discussions going on about it, as we speak. For the purpose of this, though, program in 2024, you will have a few options, including, you will always have options. Let me leave it that way. And one of the options will be this full day meditation intensive called White Tantric Yoga in Toronto. The last time we held that course in 2019, I think it was $190. It's an all day practice. Back then it had, between 250, 300 people sometimes in this church space. And it is a very powerful experience. Not everybody wants Yogi Bhajan in their face now, in that way. And so there are other accommodations that we have, alternatives that we have. And I just, I ran one here in September, which was a full day meditation program that was actually pulled a day out of the Mind and Meditation Level 2 course, which is awesome. There is a meditation day intensive in that course. It's 9 31-minute meditations that we do that day. And I think it's a nice alternative to the intensity, of White Tantric Yoga. And there are other things that are available too, but that's probably what I'll continue to offer for our community in Toronto on a day in the fall, as I did this year. Okay, moving on. You will have an opportunity to teach, and you will be marked on that. So we call that your practicum. So you'll teach a complete class, 90-minute class. There'll be a Kriya and a meditation and relaxation. You'll have the options of adding to that, like a warm-up or a breath practice if you wish. You'll have lots of time to work with that, to study that. You'll see it modeled in class a lot. What I did this past year rather, which I'm going to do again, and it's on my schedule, is I'm going to have a full day practicum intensive day at the ashram where the course is taking place, where back to back to back to back in 2 or 3 spaces, we will have people teaching. And I found that a really great way of doing this. There'll be a few people that can't make it for one reason or another, and we'll find other ways of accommodating that. It might even be in the class itself, stepping in and teaching a little bit. But what I wanted to say, as I did at the outset, that you'll have lots of practice teaching opportunities in addition to this full class that you will be teaching. All right. Okay, here we go. A 40-day, I've already talked about that, 40-day meditation practice. You will actually also prepare to curriculum too. So what that assignment looks like is you'll have an 8-week class series that you'll come up with, and you'll have a workshop. A workshop can be as short as 3 hours or a half day. It can go longer than that. It's like there might be a particular topic that you'd like to that's near and dear to your heart that you'd like to share some of your own knowledge around, and there'll be a way then perhaps that Kundalini Yoga can fit as a support to that. And so these are the things that we can work on together. Point being that at the end of this, you will have an 8-week class series. Like, you can go and teach something. It can be an introduction to Kundalini Yoga. It can be 8-week series on the 8 chakras. It can be anything. But it could be as obvious or as simple as those kinds of things that you can hit the ground running, with something. There is an exam, again, as I've shared online. We have it available in 2 formats. The format that I choose mostly, which I think is a little easier for the students too, is a take-home exam. Where you'll have a month to do it. Like I've given it last course weekend to the current class they've got to have it done 4 weeks later. They're supposed to hand it in. If they're on time with it, they'll hand it in a couple of weeks when we get together for our final class weekend. It's obviously an open book if it's at home. If you can keep up with your homework, which is the last bullet here, you can keep up your homework, you've virtually done the exam. It's almost like a cut and paste, because there's a lot of stuff, that, again, as we do curriculum on a particular class weekend, then you're given, the homework to help consolidate that, to reinforce that. And the best you can keep up with that, again, you're prepared then for your exam at the end of the year. And it won't take that long, if you're not kind of starting from square one. You need to get 75 in the exam. For what it's worth, again, with the take home in particular, everyone gets 75 without too much difficulty. If for some reason, most people get, high 90s or 90s or high 80s. It's not meant to trick you. It's just meant to help reinforce stuff that at this point, hopefully, you're starting to really get grounded in. And if for any reason it comes back, it's not quite 75, it's like, well, you get a chance to redo those parts that you weren't able to quite get. So you will pass. Just like I'll say on the practicum, no one fails a practicum. It might take more than one shot at it for one or two people, but no one fails that. You're given lots of support and opportunities to work on the areas that need work on, and you'll have another opportunity. So I wouldn't, again, be concerned about that. We have a code of ethics, and you're required to sign off on that. And I have an early bird deadline of December the 13th, so it's not that far off. And that's a discount off the regular price. So if you're an adult versus being either a full-time student or a senior 65 years plus, I fall into that category, then it's going to be a little bit cheaper. I think it's a 10% discount there. So $32.99. And then if this is something you are serious about, but that's going to be a challenge for some reason, coming up with that up front, then I have a number of ways of approaching customized payment plans. To be honest, I've been doing these sessions since last May, and I had 2 people sign up back in May, and I gave them, like a super early rate, and they did a payment plan. They're going to be complete by the time this early bird deadline shows around, and they got a really good discount. That's that they were able to do that, and they were committed back then, and away they go. So, from this point moving forward, then again, there are things that I can do. And again, I don't want to bog us down too much here, but I can certainly do that with you one-on-one to tell you, what your options are. But it will be typically working with the regular rate, I should say, with a down payment, by the early bird deadline, and then spreading payments out after that. One of the important things for this early bird deadline for me in organizing materials for this course is that we need to get, for those of you that are still old school and want physical print manuals and textbooks, then they need to be ordered from New Mexico, and they need to arrive up here, international shipping. And then I need to then bring them with me to Toronto. And that's great, but it doesn't work at the last minute. So, one's options are, again, a little trickier, at least for the first weekend, if you come in to the process late. And there are often people that will show up, and sign up at the 11th hour, and that's great. We'll accommodate them. And they may have to borrow material for the first weekend or what have you. The other thing, though, I will throw out there, and some of you may actually have a preference for electronic versions of these manuals, and that's awesome, and they're available to you too. And that gives me way more flexibility. You can that can be ordered over a couple of days. I can get that processed and available to people online. And I'll show you. I'll show you what this looks like. That's that's the manual, the yoga manual. So it's a separate piece that has, gosh, how many pages? It's, upwards of 175 pages or so. That's yoga and meditation and breath practices that we will go through most of actually in the teacher training program. So my team works typically with this and some other supplementary yoga practices that are appropriate for whatever that topic area is. But we go, through a lot of this book, and it's an awesome book to have, which, again, are important practices that have been pulled out over the decades from various manuals that have been in use. And then this is our quite thick textbook of, what is this? This is over 300 pages long. And so this is all of the curriculum that we go through, chapter by chapter. So my approach is to go through the manual. I usually often do it with PowerPoint and we'll talk to it. But I know there are other programs over the years that they just leave this for you to read on your own. And it's quite a different style of teaching. But the content here, I think, is awesome. And I think as you are very familiar with that, I think it really supports what you need to know going forward. So anyway, so this is paid for by the course. Okay, I've talked all this. I've also mentioned that the classes in the meditation intensive, are a separate cost. I think I did mention the tantric previously has been 190, includes a vegetarian meal. It's all day. The meditation intensive I do will probably be, I think it was 154 this year. I think I'll probably just drop it to 108 next year, just to make it a little easier for people. That's kind of the core team, as it were. Me and Ekon Karkar is her name in the middle there. Awesome teacher from Houston area. I don't travel. Again, it's great with Zoom and having a big screen and a good projector is that they don't have to be in the room. And so she will come in and teach the history weekend and anyway, and probably on another weekend. Eva on the right there, if you've been involved at all, I think Anastasia already mentioned you knew her. But anyway, people that might know her again through Lotus or in other ways. And she's wonderful and very dynamic teacher and trainer. We've started working with together just this year. Already talked a little bit about that. So it's officially a 220-hour course, 180 class, 40 self-study hours. Maybe it's a little bit more than 40. It is what it is. I don't burden you with homework. And I know relative to other courses, it's a little bit light. However, I also know that human nature is what it is. And often it's just not addressed early and it starts to accumulate. You have a month and it probably takes maybe a couple of hours total, to get it done. And it starts to catch up though once it's allowed to slide, just like the other requirements. So I'm going to request people to kind of keep up with the 20 classes as well, and preferably to be halfway through that requirement when we're halfway through the year. You'll have a chance to start working early on the curriculum. I'll ask you for an outline kind of mid-year just to have an idea of, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I want to work on, I have, and this, for lack of just another topic, my thing was on communication skills because I was in advertising marketing at the time, and I just done a training program around communication. And I thought that'd be an awesome thing to kind of support with yoga. So it's just having a sense of what are you thinking about so that you have, again, ample time, months to kind of figure it out and work towards that. So location, again, I'm a little vague here. It is the ashram, which is 348 Palmerston, which is College and Bathurst area, or specifically, half a block north of Palmerston on College. A beautiful, big century home that's been a home to Kundalini Yoga Sikh Dharma and residences since the mid-70s. I lived there from 2003 to 2016. So, I love this space. It's a very powerful space, I think, and near to my heart. Glad to be able to teach there again. The intensive practicum days in August, and I mentioned the the meditation day intensive. We'll find a weekend probably in September outside of the course training weekend for that. Those are the weekends. Again, they're on my website. If it matters, you can take a picture now. Otherwise, again, it's on my website. All right. So, why? Why do this? Well, there are practical reasons for it, for sure. I mean, you're drawn to explore this for some reason right now, and you could choose Kundalini or a different style of yoga. All of you are here, I think, because you're familiar with Kundalini yoga and like it. This program I've talked to you about, being KRI licensed, has very specific parameters around it. I think it's an awesome program, and I think you will too. And yeah, it's about how do I grow, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I do believe this gives you the experience and the tools to work in that area. Isn't it great to know that, like, when you're feeling like crap, that you can sit down and do a very particular short practice, like a breath practice, and create a switch? Like, I think that's awesome. And to be able to share that with other people, I think is super awesome. Like, I bring these practices into my coaching world all the time with my clients. It's not hard to figure out how to, like, block one nostril and breathe through the other nostril, as one example. So I think, anyway, those are all wonderful benefits you can expect. I think too, this is so key. The best way to learn something, if you really want to understand this for yourself, you teach it. Every time, and I've been in a training process teaching small parts or not so small parts since 2007. And I love every second of every time I have an opportunity to share anything and to have stuff shared back with me by the students. I'm just astounded at how much I learn, in that experience. And so, yeah, if you want to master something, teach. That's, again, a maxim that comes out of our practice. Whether it's teaching yoga or teaching anything, you really, really understand it, when you place yourself in a position to have to teach it. I said earlier, you can teach or not teach formally on the mat, but that last bullet really speaks to this, which is, you're going to be out there and you model. You're going to be who you are and modeling what you model, and that's going to have a very powerful and positive impact on people. And that's, I think, something to really, really celebrate. All right, and there's me. I already mentioned it. I have a Thursday night class. At this point, that's the only thing I'm teaching regularly. I may go back to in person as well, but it would be here in Brantford. Definitely not commuting to Toronto from here to teach an evening class. I also teach workshops from time to time in Toronto as well. I tend to theme mine. It's yoga to change habits. That's right out of the Beyond Addiction program. That's what I've been doing Thursday nights for a while. Other options, of course, mentioned it already, lotusyogacenter.com. Pardon me, for both in-person and online classes. And through, I can share this with you if you're interested. Just reach out to me. You can get on Ina's newsletter to get more class options when you get on her monthly newsletter list. So you'll see my stuff, the Lotus stuff, and everything else. It's available typically in the GTA, because that's really geared more towards. But now it's more and more classes are online. Doesn't matter, you can attend it from anywhere. And if you have a class that you want to offer to the local community and you're not in Toronto, you would be able to offer it through that same mechanism, through that newsletter as a teacher. Okay. And there's my stuff, TheWellnessPath.ca. And again, I'm happy to work with anybody on anything, including, anything. I have a free discovery call that you could do if that were something you wanted to explore around, your life work or trauma or anything like that, through the compassion inquiry work I do. And we could always talk about that. And that's a free call as well. Thank you for coming out tonight. And let's please stay in touch. Sat Nam.